Hi, Erica Devins with the Chamber Orchestra of the Springs here. This is Forever Joyful, Violin 1 part with some tips. All right, so a couple things that you want to notice on this piece. First of all is that there are some notes with dots, there are some notes without dots, and there are some notes with an accent on the top of them. So we're going to discuss each of those and how you achieve those articulations. Firstly, in the very beginning, we have the dotted, the eighth notes that have dots on them, right? We're only mezzo forte. This kind of a dot in particular is going to call for a sort of U shape. You're going to be thinking of making a U shape sort of with your bow and where it makes contact with the string. See that right there? You want to use your fingers and your wrist a little bit, not much of the arm, but mostly your fingers and your wrist. Okay, and that's going to make that. So then you have the decrescendo at the end of that, right? And the easiest way to achieve that when you're doing this kind of a stroke is going to be to just slightly move your bow toward the fingerboard the further you get down the decrescendo. So here's the beginning. This is all mezzo forte. And here comes the decrescendo. Now it's going to be difficult to, not difficult, but it's going to take some concentration to maintain that you are at mezzo piano at square 9. So make sure you don't go too loud because we did just decrescendo. We want that nice mezzo piano sound at 9. So at 9, okay, there's a lift at the beginning of measure 13. Just make sure that your bow is planted by the time you get ready to play beat 2. And you want to make that bow change on the long A as seamless as possible. There are parentheses around that up bow. So what that means is that you want to change bows somewhere in there, but you don't want to hear the bow change. So make it as light and quiet as possible. So you want to make sort of a turn with your bow when you get to the end, when you get to the tip of your bow to go to the up bow. You want to make a little turn that will help to keep the bow change very quiet. Listen. One more time. And see how I kind of turn my bow at the tip when I go to do the change. It takes a little bit of practice to get it to be very quiet, but just work on that and you'll get it. So here's that that long A just before 17. 1, 2, 3. Still mezzo piano. And there's another crescendo. So in the decrescendo, we move toward the fingerboard. In the crescendo, we're going to be moving from near the fingerboard towards the bridge to get that nice loud crescendo into the loud forte at square 33. Also, it's important to note that at 25, we have all of these nice 1, 2, 3 sort of slur up sorts of kind of chunks of music, right? So when we do 2 notes on a down bow and then 1 on an up, the tendency is to whack the up bow, but we're going to avoid whacking the up bow by taking a little bit slower bow on the down bow and a tiny bit faster on the up bow. That will help us to avoid the whack. Also, make sure you conserve your bow at the very beginning of that crescendo that is found 2 measures before 33, and wait for the crescendo closer to the end of the measure as opposed to in the beginning, because it'll have a more bigger effect that way. So just before 33, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go 4 measures. 1, 2, 3. So there, 33, we're nice and legato, dee da don't whack, dun da dee dun da, decrescendo, more mezzo forte, and then we have some dots, right? So again, those are going to be very similar to the ones at the beginning. We're going to be off the string, like the ones in the beginning, making a sort of a U shape with our bow and the contact it makes with the string, right? So let's see, when we get there, right, after 33, we're coming out of a decrescendo, so, oh, that starts up. Okay, so you have to go and then think of lifting, because we need to be going in a U shape when we make those staccato notes, right? So, okay, so when we go, there's another crescendo in which we're going to be moving closer to the bridge, right? And it's going to get us louder to the forte at 41, where we have some dotted notes again, staccato notes, right? But it's forte this time. So we're going to give it a little bit more, we're going to give it a tiny bit more length, sort of, at 41. So it can be a little bit louder, but still with the nice U shape. Crescendo. And then back down, right? So there's a crescendo, decrescendo, where we're going to be kind of around in the normal place we would be near the sweet spot, but then we're going to go closer to the bridge to make it louder, and then closer back down toward the fingerboard to make it a little quieter. But remember, we start forte, we end mezzo forte, right? Don't forget the decrescendos. Okay, so here at 67, so between 57 and 67, we're the same as far as dynamic, right? So we want to make sure that across, it's really easy in that section to get too loud in certain places. So really be thinking about mezzo piano. The whole line from 57 to 67 is mezzo piano. There, now you may do some phrasing in there, depending on what the melody is doing, because even though we're first violins, we don't always have the melody, so we need to really pay attention to what else is happening. Then when we get into 67, we're still mezzo piano, but there's a crescendo, a poco a poco crescendo, meaning we're going to crescendo little by little all the way from 67 to 81. Now that's a very long way to crescendo, to a fortissimo. Most of that crescendo is going to happen at the very tail end of that, just before 81. So at 67, remember, stay mezzo piano for a couple of measures. Also, this is an excellent opportunity between 67 and 75 to use third position. Just stay in third position all the way from 67 to 75, and that'll be some good third position practice for you on this. So from 67, here we are, 1, 2, 3. Shift back to first. Here's the rest of the crescendo. Okay, so in there, right, we got to the fortissimo. When just before the fortissimo, the couple of measures, 2-3 measures before, we did the most of the crescendo, right? We went all the way from probably forte in the last 3 measures to fortissimo. And all of the measures before that, from 67, were somewhere between mezzo piano and mezzo forte. So just stay mezzo piano after 67 for about 4 measures, then get a little bit louder in the 71 measure, then kind of quiet again. But we're still about mezzo forte here at 75, where we're going to be back in first position. Right, and then we have the sort of carat accents there at 81. Now, to make those accents, you want them to be sort of into the string a little bit. You want them to be very pointed. What I mean by into the string a little bit is that you're going to put a tiny bit of weight. Well, quite a lot actually in comparison to all of the other notes that we've played in this piece, because so far we've only got dots and non-dots, right? So we're going to really kind of lay into the string in the beginning of the note and then not so much after that, right? So we're also going to give it quite a bit of speed at the beginning of the note as well to achieve that accent along with the weight that we're giving it. And it's going to be a faster stroke than anything else we've played before in this piece. Right, and see how different those strokes are? Right, so remember the carat-y ones are going to be very, very harsh accent, while the dots are not going to be harsh at all, just short. So at the mezzo forte, we'd go ahead and accomplish that decrescendo going into 89, and then we're piano. So how are we going to accomplish the decrescendo going into 89? Well, we're going to play those notes closer and closer to the fingerboard. Right? Okay, so it's also going to be also a little bit lighter of a stroke the further you get down the decrescendo. So a little bit less hair each time as you're getting to down the decrescendo, right? There's all my hair. There's a little closer to the fingerboard and a little less hair, even less hair, and barely any contact, right? To make the decrescendo. Then we go on 89. And I'm going to suggest third position for this just because it's piano, and it's better to play on the G string if you want to get a nice pianissimo sound, as opposed to playing an open string, which is going to be a brighter, much brighter sound. Okay, so 89, we're in third position. Right, and remember there's another parentheses around the up bow, so we want to make that up bow like pretend like it's not there, like we want to do it, but we don't want to hear it, right? 89, 1, 2, 3. Lots of vibrato. 2, 3. Just stay in third position. First position. Okay, so now we're back in first position. We want to go back in first position at the measure before 105 on the open A. You want to play that open and then go ahead back to first position. Then at 105 it says gradually becoming more detached and accented. So what that means is that each time that you play the quarter notes, they're going to get shorter and shorter until 113, where you have an accented, but a little bit of a different accented than the accents before. But you do have accented notes at 113 in fortissimo. But the notes just before that in 112 are going to be quite a bit shorter than the ones in the staff above that in 106. So while the ones in 106 are going to be a sort of still kind of long, because before we're playing legato. If you notice a couple of measures after 89, it says legato. So that means we want to play those notes as smooth as possible. Let me just go back and reiterate that a little bit. So at 89, very piano, quiet. Then here's the legato. Very connected. Shift. Very connected still. A little less connected. A little less. Short. And there we are at fortissimo, right? So, so there's that. Let me play it for you one more time, 105, and then we'll go play 13 out. So 113, let me just talk about that real quick. Those accents are going to be slightly different than the ones from before. The ones from before are very harsh accents, right? Very pointed. These ones at 113 are accented in the beginning and then back off immediately. So it's more of a lean in sort of feel, right? Okay, so there's you can interpret it as having a tiny bit of space between the notes, but not too much, but definitely with a lean on the very, very beginning of each note. So again, one more time, 113, 1, 2, 3. So you can not even hear the space. I'm feeling it as a little bit of space in order to prepare for the accent, but you don't really hear very much space in this particular line at 113. So again, it sounds like this: 1, 2, 3. All right, and then we're back to a piano staccato stroke and a crescendo, fortissimo. So there you go.